Whatever the president's tone is on immigration, deportation arrests continue. Elaine, there's a well-publicized case breaking today in Mississippi where a 22-year-old woman who was at a press conference talking about the peril that undocumented immigrants find themselves in was arrested. She's lived in the United States since age 7, brought here by her parents from Argentina. For a while, she had protection under the Obama administration program known as DACA, but that protection had lapsed. Immigration and Customs Enforcement say she will be held without bond pending an immigration judge's review of her status.
So, Major, given that context that you just outlined, what then is your understanding of the president's plan on immigration? And also, what happened to the idea that he was open to granting legal status to millions of undocumented immigrants?
Well, let's take the last part of your question first, Elaine. That feels to me, and I think to many in Washington, like a classic trial balloon. Float it and see what happens. And in Vice President Pence's answer to the very good question our colleague Norah O'Donnell pressed, when he says, well, we'll see what happens, this administration is trying to at least open the door to conversations with Congress in the context of immigration reform that would create some legal status for those who are in the country without documentation but who have no criminal record. That's not a new idea. It has been tried before by President George W. Bush and by President Obama. What would be new is if this president can sell that approach to a Republican Party base that killed those earlier attempts at immigration reform by dubbing that very idea amnesty. We have no idea, Elaine, whatsoever how interested the president is in this idea, how politically committed he is to it, or if he really believes this is something he can achieve. What we do know is, for a brief couple of hours, that trial balloon was floated, and then on the biggest stage he has had politically since the inaugural address, he did not follow up.
Well, Major, during his address, the president did speak about merit-based immigration. Can you help us understand what did he mean by that?
Well, that's an idea that has circulated in some immigration circles for the better part of 5 to 10 years. And what it essentially asserts is an open-ended legal immigration system. This is all about legal immigration, Elaine, doesn't necessarily help America. That merit-based, meaning those who apply for legal immigration status should have either ethnic characteristics or job skills or background that is most helpful to the United States, either in employment terms or cultural terms. Now, that's very hard to define. Typically, and what legally we do now is there is a broad number, it's about 1 million a year under legal immigration status, and it is accorded on a country-by-country basis. This idea of merit-based is to create a system by which you are judged not just by how long you've been in line and if all your paperwork is in order, but if you come from a part of the world or you have an essential set of skills most relevant to American employment needs, then you would get to the front of the line. That's what merit-based immigration is all about. It is largely theoretical. No one that I'm aware of has put this down in legislative language so you could actually look at the criterion for who would or would not qualify based on those who are in line already for legal immigration status. But it is something this president talked about with some degree of specificity last night, putting that on the table. And I will tell you, Elaine, in the context of immigration reform, because I've covered this quite a bit here in Washington, illegal status and what you do with those who are here without proper documentation is a huge and very difficult to resolve issue. Changing the definition of legal immigration and moving toward a merit-based system would be nearly as complex and I would say almost as politically risky. So essentially you have not one front fraught with political peril, but possibly two.
We'll continue to watch that. Also last night, Major, we did not hear anything about the president's revised travel ban during his address to Congress. And during an off-camera briefing Wednesday, Press Secretary Sean Spicer didn't provide any new details. What is the latest? What's the status of that? Do we know?
It's still being reviewed, and I'm told by those within the administration who have direct knowledge of it, it is being revised and revised in a way that might surprise many Americans, that some countries originally on that list of 7 predominantly Muslim countries may not be there. Iraq is a classic example, and other countries that weren't on that list of the original 7 may be added to the list. And that review process is going on internally at the State Department, here at the White House, the Department of Homeland Security. There is a lot of pulling and tugging about which countries should be on that list, what is the underlying policy justification for the countries that do appear on this revised and rewritten executive order, and all of that is still being teased out and has yet to be resolved.
Major, there's been a lot of discussion about the difference in tone of the president's speech on Tuesday. What are you hearing about how that difference, how that change in tone came about?
Well, because the White House made a tactical decision that on this stage, with the country watching probably in large numbers for the first time since the inaugural address, the president had to give himself and this White House some room to maneuver on two key tonal and symbolic bases, if you will. One, reaching across the aisle to Democrats, and two, speaking about larger aspirations that can unify the entire country. Those are familiar themes for any new president. That's not a new tactical maneuver. But for this president, it's certainly different in style. And the idea for this White House is for the next couple of weeks to be able to say, whenever it is questioned about tone or reaching out or dealing with divisive politics, to say, hey, you saw the president speak from the well of the House of Representatives. He reached out repeatedly to Democrats. He tries to unify the country. The rhetoric could not have been more an attempt to unify. It's a placeholder for this president and this White House to give itself some ability to push back against the narrative of the first month of this White House that it was either disorganized, divisive, or both.
Finally, Major, in an uncharacteristic move, the president sent only one tweet from his personal account in the hours following the speech. It was one tweet, 2 words, thank you. What's the significance of that?
I can only tell you, Elaine, what friends of the president have told me, that they have told him. Less is more.
Less is more. What more do you need to say than that? Message discipline, I suppose, for those communications experts. Major Garret, thank you so much.
You got it.